Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. And today I want to talk about another question that comes up a lot for solo travelers. At least for me, it comes up fairly often, and even if it isn't brought up explicitly, I can tell a lot of the time people are thinking it. But I do get asked, don't you get lonely? Short answer, not really. I've never quite understood that question because I have contacts. I talk to people every day. The people that ask me are often other travelers I spend time with or who know that I talk to people every day, have seen me having conversation with locals and other travelers. They know that I talk to my family and friends, back home or on the phone, and I'm messaging people. But I'll still get asked if I'm lonely. And I don't know, I miss people sometimes in the way that I would like to spend time with a particular friend. But I know that they're living their lives, and I'm on another continent. So I don't know why. That doesn't bother me. Knowing that other people are living their lives is okay with me, and that I'm living my life. I think I just don't understand exactly what many other people mean by loneliness. Because I feel like there's a lot of talk about how people feel alone in a crowd, and there's a lot of talk about people who are separated from everyone around them. Like they actually don't get along with people at all, so they don't talk to anybody. And then there are people who are not even in a crowd, people who are hermetic, who actually keep themselves away from people as much as possible. And if that's what people mean when they ask me, well, don't you get lonely? Then not really, because I'm around people all the time. And I meet people fairly often. As I've mentioned, people love talking to a solo traveler. And yeah, they're always curious where you came from and what you're doing next. What you are doing here is probably the most common question. And that leads to very deep, value-based, introspective, sharing conversations. So I don't fit into the typical, or rather the typical expressions of loneliness as I understand when people ask me, because I ask them, well, what do you mean? And that's usually what they tell me. Well, you're not traveling with somebody else, so don't you feel like you're by yourself? Yeah, because I'm not with anybody else. But it doesn't really bother me to be by myself, as you may be able to tell from the fact that I've record all of these podcasts and talk to myself all day without a problem. Some people ask directly, others skirt around an issue. But they're asking the same thing regardless of how people skirt around or directly address the topic. In terms of lonely in a crowd, no, I don't feel that way because I feel so connected and nearly on the same level with anyone, no matter which crowd I'm in. Even if I can't speak the language well in a country, I know that I would be able to communicate what I needed to communicate if I needed to talk to somebody. And fairly often, I'll be struggling through to speak a new language, and the person I'm talking to will pop into conversational or fluent English. And also, a big part of this is that I've learned several languages traveling around, and I'm not good at most of them. I'm comfortable speaking English, and I'm comfortable speaking Mandarin Chinese, although it's nowhere near my native English level, obviously. And then I'm comfortable with Spanish. When I was in Italy, pretty comfortable with Italian. But the thing is, every time I learn a new language, I realize as soon as my language level hits high enough that I can understand ambient conversations around me, I start listening to all the chatting and the small talk going on around me on the sidewalk when I'm walking down the sidewalk or someone's talking into their phone. And There's no difference at all between countries in their small talk, everyday chatter. When I get to the level that I can understand people around me talking, or I hear a conversation between two waiters talking to each other, or guys working out in the park together, or girls rollerblading down the track for the first time, they're all talking about the same things. And it doesn't matter if I'm in Rome, or if I'm in Colorado, or if I'm in Thailand. Actually, I can't say Thailand because I never got to that level in Thailand. Italy. Oh wait, I said Rome. Jesus. Hang on. Australia? No, I already understand Australia. Oh my gosh. Japan, for sure. If I'm in any of these countries, I sort of these days dread the moment that I'll be able to understand the small talk around me, because I was never super fond of small talk. Like most people, I prefer issues of consequence or a specific interest. I'm very into picking apart large or complex issues and trying to lay them bare. And I certainly small talk when I see people. I know how to do it. I'm good at it. People like it when I small talk at them, in reciprocation especially. But I'm not particularly interested in it. And the first time it hit me was when I was in China. Because so I grew up, and when I was in high school, I was very good at Spanish. And there was me and one other native Spanish speaker in the Spanish 5 class or whatever it was. And I was talking to her, but when I thought of my level in Spanish, I imagined that if I ever went to a Spanish-speaking country, just like the language on the surface was so different from English, the Spanish language, and the country itself is so different, the customs, the laws, everything about their lives, I imagined that what those people would talk about would be completely divorced from my reality as an American growing up. And I imagined that was how everywhere would be. I would see TV shows talking about how proud Italians were of their cuisine, or how Japan was so proud of their natural environment and how they respected and sort of worship the natural environment. And I just expected, growing up without any experience, that moving to another country would mean that small talk wasn't there. Small talk, and I should be more clear, I do mean petty talk as well. Guys commenting on pretty girls, or girls standing around a clothes rack and talking to each other about the yellow dress and its merits and demerits. Or the, yeah, this is life, what are you gonna do? Attitude that is so pervasive in the US. The acceptance of, hey, I don't like it, but I've done what I don't like my whole life, so I'll just keep doing it. But I think because the languages sounded so different, I assumed, for no good reason, that non-English language speakers wouldn't be so consumed with idly commenting on women's bodies, or talking about how cool more money would be, or if the girl called them back or not, or if she was going to meet him today. And I realized one day I was walking down the street in China, just down a regular Beijing city street, and I passed a group of high school, college girls, something like that. And all of a sudden I could understand them. And they were saying, oh my God, did he? No, he didn't say that. What do you think he meant? And I was like, oh no. Because I was really hoping that once I could understand the ambient conversation around me, that it would reveal itself to be something like, are you sure? I'm not sure that's what that philosopher meant. Is the sky blue or is it just the ocean? That kind of stuff. But all I kept hearing were the exact same conversations I would hear if I was speaking English in the United States. Very human, extremely representative conversations of non-critical topics. Oh, I love this song. This song sucks. It's pretty good. No, it sucks. Well, why don't you like it? 'Cause it sucks. I think it's pretty good. And that's just all of the conversations in the whole world. In any urban modern society I've been in that I can understand the talk, French and Morocco, Italian, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, regular conversations between people are generally not consequential. And I know that it sounds like I'm complaining about it, but that's fine. It was very comforting, in addition to my frustration momentarily, because I was like, well, of course they aren't. They're all people. And that was really nice, because then I was like, it's fine that I'm in China or Korea or Italy or wherever, and they're saying the same stuff, because now I know that that's true, that cliche that I've heard so many times, that people around the world really are all the same. Once I could understand people and talk to them, yeah, they are. There's a difference in the cultural understandings of the world, so there are all of these ripples on the surface of our consciousnesses that differ, but it's really like the width between each ripple is differing. But the similarity is all of the water in the entire lake, not just the ripples on the 2D surface. But the human consciousness, from everyone I talk to, they're all made of ripples. They're all thoughts going out there. And nearly everybody is talking to everybody else about money, sex, food, very basic life things, which are, forces that heavily influence most people's lives. So it makes sense that everybody talks about it. It was just really funny growing up that I always, from the moment I realized languages were not a direct substitute, like, for example, I remember when I was in middle school or something, when I first learned the beginning of Spanish, like the first day, and it was hola. And then, actually, it was when I was waiting at the bus stop with my dad, and he said, hola is hi in Spanish. And I was like, oh, okay. But there's only 2 letters in English and 4 letters in hola, so then how do you translate that? So H is H, and then I is O, and I thought it was like a substitution thing, and that's what a different language was. And my dad was like, no, you idiot. No, he just said that's not how languages work. They're just different systems completely. They don't have any kind of substitution. And I was like, whoa. And that's when I got really interested in learning other languages, and that's when I started becoming interested in learning Spanish, and that stayed with me all the way through high school. And then I didn't use it in my travels until a decade and a half later. But it's very difficult for me to feel lonely in a crowd, or lonely when I'm not talking to a person at that moment, because I've listened to so many conversations. I've sat at so many tables, whether it's a business meeting, or a dinner or lunch we're all having, or a group planning a hike, and I'm interested in watching people talk and interact. I always have been. And I still like people watching a lot. But because I've been in so many group situations and I've listened to so many people talk about the same things, regardless of the language they speak or the country they're from, or what is even going on in their lives at that moment, I never really feel that lonely, because I know that if I talk to one of these people around me, I'm gonna be able to hit it off with them pretty easily, because everybody starts on those basic visceral desires. They're always on our minds. Ugh, the sun is hot today. Like, yeah, that's banal weather talk, but that's what everybody on the sidewalk next to you is also thinking. It's unimportant, and it's also pretty much the most important thing humans can talk about, the weather, because it affects all of them at the same time. It bands them together. If the grid fails in Texas for the 10th year in a row, people where the grid is failing, they're not going to be worrying about secondary concerns. They're going to be really upset that they're dying from the cold again for the 10th year. Chilly Ben isn't saying, oh yeah, I was quoting Browning the other day. Nope, Ben is thinking, man, it's cold, I'm gonna die, I wish the Texas electrical grid didn't fail every year. So, in the sense of feeling alone in a crowd, I don't because I know I'm connected, and because I feel the same way. I also, if it's cold, it's cold, and if it's hot, it's hot. Maybe I like the cold more than other people, and I dislike the heat more than other people, but I know that all around me, there are hundreds of people commiserating with me, even if we aren't talking to each other. I can tell by the way they're hunched over, by the way they make sure to stand under the shadow of the stop sign at the intersection rather than waiting out in the sunlight. If there's someone grilling street food, we stare at the food. If there's a little dog, we all, oh, look, a doggy. There are so many basic visceral human experiences that we share regardless of where anybody is, and further experiences. Love, sex, money, independence. Even in less independent countries, like China, they still talk about independence just as much as any American does. They just think about independence in a different way. But their wishes for more independence are exactly as strong. They're exactly the same. They're just speaking in a different frame of reference. So, learning all these languages and listening to people and people watching and understanding that we are all basically the same. There's so little difference between humans across the world so far that I've seen. It's difficult to feel lonely, at least in the sense of lonely in a crowd, because I know that we're all feeling and thinking about mostly the same things most of the day on the surface. And then when we get deeper, those feelings are all pretty similar too. Love for your family, worries about someone important in your life, yearning to do something, make something of yourself. Those are as common as the weather, as far as I am in conversations with strangers from other countries. Everybody is thinking that same thing. First, it's whatever's salient. The street food chef will talk about their street food. The student will talk about the classes they're taking until you break through. First, it's those same things and other things. It's so hard to change our own lives. Am I doing enough? What will I leave behind when I die? Common ideas that you would hear in the society that you're from, whichever society you're listening to, you will hear that in all other societies also. In Cambodia, there was this cool sculptor who could sculpt wooden tigers and other animals really well. In fact, some might say carve, given that it's wood. He carved wooden tigers. He wanted to support his family as much as he could, and he was worried he wasn't making enough of himself to do that well. I have heard that same concern in every country by every parent who has been in that conversation with me, or who I've been in earshot of while they have that conversation. I don't know if I'm raising my kids right. Every parent ever from every country in the world thinks that. Even Chinese parents who have an extremely rigid social structure, and so the way you're supposed to raise your kids isn't like, yeah, just do whatever you think is right. No, what you do in China is what everybody else is supposed to do. And Chinese parents are different from family to family, but regardless of how they raise their kids, they're all worried about how they're raising their kids, about how their kid is growing up to become a person. And Japanese parents worry about the same thing, and American parents worry about the same thing, and parents everywhere worry about the same thing. Now, I'm sure many people have grown up in difficult homes where, well, my mom, my dad didn't care about me. Yes, that's totally not being cared for or being hurt by your parent is another extremely common thing around the world. I'm not saying that everybody's situations are the same. I'm saying that specifically on this theme of loneliness, don't you get lonely? I don't, because I talk to people every day, and I've heard the human themes that I've heard 1,000 times before and are just as impactful every time I hear them because they are human concerns. So I don't get lonely because every person I talk to reminds me of those human themes, reminds me of what it means to be a human, as I understand it, regardless of which country I'm in. and they might do or say something that surprises me, but there's nothing they're going to do or say that is going to convince me that this person, no matter how different they may look or how different they may speak, is anything other than a human like me and like all the other humans I know. We are a species, we are a group, and we are inextricably linked and connected through our humanity. In the countries I've been to so far. But after a few dozen countries, and realizing that boys are boys, girls are girls, others are others, and we're all the same humanity, no matter if I go to a new country where I can't speak anything, I feel just as at home and comfortable there around other people, and connected to those other people, as I would if I could speak fluently. After I can speak fluently in that language, or at least conversationally, I might get closer to certain individuals, but as a feeling of loneliness, just by being in a situation that I can't connect to because I can't speak the language particularly well, that doesn't bother me at all, because I've been to too many places with too many external differences, where as soon as I can communicate with people, they confirm that, yeah, we are all the same humans. We like to tell our stories. We like to look good in those stories. We don't like to be hurt by others. We like to eat good food. We want better opportunities. We want people to like us. And 100 million other things that you'll hear from most of the population. So in terms of feeling lonely because I'm not culturally connected or linguistically connected to a new place that I've ventured in, nope, I don't feel lonely at all, because I know as soon as I learn that language, which is a human thing, we can all learn language as well. I have taught 3-year-olds and I have taught 80-year-olds. That's not true. I've taught 65-year-olds. And they've both learned English. They've both learned Chinese at the same time. They can learn languages. People can learn languages. And I know that as soon as I can learn that language, instead of that ambient connectedness that I already feel to everyone around me all the time, I am also going to be more personally connected to whichever individuals I talk to. So that's kind of my basis for not feeling lonely, as far as I understand what people mean when they ask it. Because I know humanity is humanity, because I've experienced humanity as humanity in so many places, in so many different forms, but intrinsically more than a little bit similar. Less than identical, more than similar. And regardless of where I am or how I travel, I'm always next to someone, some person that I feel linked to through our shared humanity. So how about the other two forms of loneliness? Where there isn't somebody physically next to me that I can talk to and ask for help with things, or shoot the shit with, just talk about whatever's going on in my day. This is a big solo versus group traveling thing for me. I have never been a huge fan of group traveling. I've only done it a couple times. I've gone on a few tours when someone who was close to me asked me to go on this tour with them and a group. And I've traveled with close romantic partners and some friends sometimes. But solo traveling is so awesome versus group traveling that whatever negative space there is by not having another person physically next to me is offset pretty handily by being able to do what I want to all the time and eat what I want to all the time. Like if I want my schedule to go until 4 a.m. every day, that's perfectly fine if I'm by myself. It's an easy transition to a different circadian rhythm, but that would be very disturbing for the people I was traveling with, or the person if I was in a group or in a couple of adventurers. If they want to go climb the mountain when they get up, and I don't want to climb the mountain until I get up 5 hours later, it's inconvenient for both of us. And if I'm traveling by myself without someone right next to me, I can climb the mountain when I get up, and there's no pressure to meet the inclinations of another person. It's just simpler. I like working with people. I love helping people. I feel really good when I can help someone do something. I feel great when I can support someone to do something. But when I'm making the decision of what I'm going to eat that night or what I'm going to do the next day as a physical activity like climbing a mountain or when I'm going to go to bed, it's a lot easier when it's just me. I've been in a lot of relationships, romantic and friend relationships, and you just have to organize these things. You have to say, well, we'll both do this at this time. We'll go to this restaurant. Are you sure that's the best one? I don't know. Maybe let's just go find out. Well, what about the pizza one? Sure, let's go to that one. But I really wanted sushi tonight. Okay, then let's go to the sushi one. I might have that same dialogue playing out in my head. Should I get sushi? Oh, the pizza looks pretty good. I kind of do want sushi. But I don't have to go through the trouble of reassuring the group I'm with. Like, guys, it's fine. We can have pizza. I don't need sushi. I suggested it. If everyone wants pizza, I like pizza also. Let's go to pizza. Anytime I feel like a decision that should be simple is made complicated for no good reason, I get frustrated, and a huge part of that is because now we're wasting time. And if you've listened to the time episode, I'm well aware that time is the most valuable resource any of us have. And while I don't think we have to worry about the time we have left, and we shouldn't because there's no way to know anyway, I don't want to fritter away time deciding to do something versus doing something regardless of whether it's a good idea or a good +1 idea. Like if I'm deciding between, like if the group is deciding between two restaurants and half of the people want to go to one, half of the people want to go to the other, let's flip a coin and go to a restaurant. Because the 15 minutes that we're going to spend talking about the merits of each restaurant, first of all, almost never is constructive. It's almost always just, I don't know, I was there and the salami was really good. Or, I don't know, I was there and the tuna was really good. Sort of being mumbled at each other, and the other people in the group, whenever they're like, oh yeah, all right, that does, I mean, I do like pizza, I guess, yeah. And then someone screams, but olives are bullshit. It's like a lot of time. We talk about humans, me also. We all, just by being with other humans, we osmotically and spiritually conclave about these issues for such a long amount of time that I would never do on my own. That's not true, actually. If I'm walking down the street, I can waffle back and forth between which restaurant to go to. But in that situation, I know I'm not taking up anybody else's time, and I'm already on my way to the food, and I have fun imagining the different meals at each restaurant individually that won't interfere with someone else's enjoyment of the meal. But if we're in a group, I've never been in a group where we have 6 people trying to decide where to go eat dinner as a group, and in the middle of a 20-minute discussion, one guy's like, you know what I like? I like just talking about this. Isn't it great that we're all just not deciding on where to go eat? No, I've never heard that before. And I don't think in general people like not having a decision made. People get frustrated and just want to go eat what they want to eat. They want to be eating, not talking. So if I'm walking down the street, I'm already on my way in the vicinity of 2 restaurants. I'm like, I could go to either one. That's great. I'll get there. I'll go to one. Fine. But if we all have to sit around in the living room coming to a consensus because some guy suggests a different restaurant, and then when other people agree, they're like, well, we don't have to go there if you guys really want to go to the first one. And there's just no reason to spend that much time on a choice. Because whatever the choice is, it happens, and then you go, and then there are more choices after that, and then some more, and then you're dead. The outcome's the same. These aren't real problems. These aren't issues that deserve consideration. Past a couple minutes. Raise your hand. Do more people like pizza or do more people like sushi? Okay, the sushis have it. Let's go to Bluefin Getaway, which by the name you can tell is the best sushi restaurant. But the problem is that I am certainly including myself in this problem, none of us seem to realize how much time we're going to spend discussing what we're going to do until we begin the discussion. Meetings seem like a great idea until you are in a meeting, and then meetings are the worst form of human communication. I wonder if that's why Chinese people love tour groups so much. As a society, they were just like, you know what I'm not going to do? Discuss what I'm going to do. Give me a list of stuff. I'll give you $100. Take me to those places, then take me to the next place, and then take me home. Now, I don't like that. I've been on the Chinese tours. They're not fun for me. Very regimented. I can't stroll anywhere or, take a bite from a restaurant that catches my eye I might not have otherwise seen. No rambling allowed. But I just thought of that. Maybe that's why Chinese people do it, because they hate indecisiveness culturally by this point. So solo traveling just makes sense to me, and I like solo traveling. So not having a person or people next to me physically in my space doesn't bother me. I don't need people around me. I never really have. A lot of my activities are solo. I like jogging. I like listening to podcasts. I like writing, reading, hiking, a bunch of stuff that I can pretty easily do by myself. And I don't have to spend any time deliberating whether or not I'm going to do something. I either do it or I don't. And I might think I'm going to go hike that mountain that day and then end up watching TV for 6 hours, but that's because I wanted to watch the TV. So I still get to do what I wanted to do regardless. I don't have to endure the tyranny of the majority? No, it's fun being in groups. It can be fun, but I don't get lonely when I'm not in a group. And I like being in a relationship and traveling with a significant other. But if I'm not with them, a lot of the similar considerations evaporate, and I'm much more liberated to act how I want to act, to do what I want to do every day. And I like the constraints of a romantic relationship in general. But if I'm not in one, the afforded liberties of being by myself are nothing to sneeze at. They're also pretty nice. And as a last part, for just not being physically next to other people, that's not an insurmountable problem for me. So I never feel like there's nobody next to me now, there will never be anybody next to me ever again. I'm pretty comfortable talking to people, and as a solo traveler, people are very excited to talk to me, even if I'm not looking for company or doing a completely unrelated solo activity. If you're traveling with 2 or more people, it's a world apart. You will very rarely be approached by locals or other traveler groups if you are 2 or more people traveling. And that's fine, you'll still make connections and stuff. But it's just rare, it's much more rare than it is for people to see a solo traveler and feel comfortable enough to ask them, hey, how are you? Where are you from? What are you doing? Da-da. It's really, that happens to me a lot in every country. And today there are dating apps and friend apps, and they have live music in every country. If you get a restaurant, you'll probably build up a rapport with the person behind the counter. Or I should speak for myself, I feel like I probably would build up a rapport after I go to a restaurant a few times and exchange a few conversations. And very rapidly people want to talk about deeper things. At least with me. Maybe just because my preference is to dive deeper into any topic I hear about. I like learning all the intricacies of a story, a life story. It's just been a rough day, you know. And then they laugh it off, and I'm like, really? What happened today? It's just this thing with the school. Don't worry about it. Well, I'm kind of curious now. What happened with the school? Okay, so my brother goes to blah blah university, and he was in this protest 2 weeks ago, and the cops arrested him, and they let him go, but now I'm worried that he's in the system, And he says he still wants to go to more protests. And I don't think that's really safe, but I can't stop him from going. And then, boom, conversation. Now we're talking about family values and how personal responsibility works towards family members. And now we're just in your personal beliefs and values. Those conversations happen extremely quickly. And like I said, maybe it's because I'm interested in the beginnings and endings and middles of every little thing. But even if I don't have someone next to me 24 hours a day to continue these conversations with, it's not very difficult for me to find someone to have a deeper conversation with. And I've been walking through a park and someone invited me to play chess with them. So I did, and I got wrecked because I don't have the patience or maybe the intellect for chess. Maybe I'm a lot dumber than I think I am. Spoiler alert, I am. Or when someone finds out these days, if they find out that I travel full time and they're like, well, what do you do for a job? And I explain about the English schools and investing, and then now I have enough money from investments, so I just travel the world and do what I want. Then if someone finds out that I retired at like 27 or whatever it was, then they have to know, well, what did you do? And that usually leads to financial. They try to dive deeper on that. But once they find out I'm making just enough to travel and I don't really care to make much more than that the accrual is not as important to me as what I can actually buy with the money I have. One guy got angry at me once about it, and he was like, what, so you're just budgeting? And I was like, how do you think people keep money? That's all having money is. It's not spending money. But the way I think about money is the things I like to do the most are travel to new countries, learn, and talk to people here and there. I need $500 to $1,000 a month to do that very comfortably, and every other dollar of passive income I have coming in after that is another beer that I get to drink in leisure. I don't know what I would do with the rest of the money. Buy more beer? That's probably not a good idea. Okay, and that actually brings me to another point. Finances are very big in many people's minds, and they haven't been a part of my considerations outside of housing and food for the month. And that's a problem I basically solved by saving money, investing it, and receiving passive income. I prefer making money that way. But a lot of people who have not retired think about money a lot because they're told they're supposed to have a house, and they're told they need a car, and they're told that they have to work a certain way in a certain company to achieve a certain status so that other people will think well of them. And this is, of course, not everyone. There are plenty of struggling parents who understand exactly what money is worth down to the penny, but this story is about why I don't get lonely. It's because many more people who are not struggling parents talk to me about money and they can't understand why I don't want more money. And I tell them I do. I narrate audiobooks. I do other things. I'll teach English again if I really want a bunch of money really quickly. It's just that the things I like doing with money are not super expensive. Plane ticket a couple $100, house a couple $100 for a month, food a couple $100 for a month. And then I have all the rest of the precious resource time to do with what I will. But a lot of people are invested in the value of money beyond the concrete value. They're interested in the status value of money or the ideal of wealth as a thought. Whereas I think it's a lot more interesting what you can do with the money you have. Make $100,000 in your first year. How much time do I have to spend to do that? Is it more than like a couple hours a week? Because I can already fly to countries. I can already rent houses for a few $100 a month. I can already eat all the food I want to all the time. I have romantic relationships and I have friendships. I'm not sure why I would sacrifice time for an extra $100,000. Unless it's like 2 hours swimming. If someone told me, go swim in a pool for 2 hours straight and I'll give you $100,000, I'd be like, can I float on my back sometime, take a rest? Yes, but only for 30 seconds at a... Okay, sure, yeah, I'll do it. Like, yeah, I'd swim in a pool for 2 hours for $100,000. But if someone's like, look, this is going to be hard. This is for someone who wants to be better than everyone else. You're not going to like your life for this next year. I'll be like, great, I'm not going to do that. That sounds terrible. And I have that kind of conversation a lot. I was in an Airbnb in Las Vegas briefly, and this guy tried to convince me that I had that. Basically, he gave me that conversation. And he was like, bro, I got a friend and he's networked with all the biggest whatever marketing something. And all you got to do is go on like 6 interviews a week and invest like $10,000 up front or $3,000, whatever. It was some amount of money I could swing. And he was like, bro, I did that. I'm earning like $200,000 a year. And in my head, I'm like, bro, you're Airbnb-ing a room in a house. You're not making $200,000 a year. And you're trying to MLM me with some advertising company, some advertising opportunity. And I'm a rapper. Listen to this beat. Oh, man. And then I bought him a cigar, and he started telling everybody I was really cool. But it's not even that he's living in an Airbnb. Maybe he did have $200,000 and he was living in an Airbnb with 5 other people. That Airbnb had a mattress in the laundry room. And someone was renting that room for like $100 a month or something crazy. I don't know. That was bizarre. And that host was weird. And he stole my mom's birthday present to me. And then threatened to call the cops on me if I didn't leave. That was a weird time. Las Vegas is weird. But as for this guy, it's not that he's living in the Airbnb. It's that he thinks the $200,000 means something. Something that other people should be impressed by, or it means he's going to get something. I don't know what he thinks he's going to get for the $200,000 that he couldn't get with $20,000 or whatever amount of money. I don't know. The value of money, the intrinsic value of money that is not real, that is non-existent, since there is no intrinsic value of money. It's simply what we agree to trade for bread, is a very boring topic of conversation to me that unfortunately many people, maybe by virtue of the difficult systems they grow up in around the world, are very interested in talking about. And I have to gently explain to many people who are fervently soliloquizing about the intrinsic value of money that I don't believe in the intrinsic value of money. I simply believe in what trading the money can get me materially. That's all I'm interested in money for. I don't care how many digits are in the account, what your account is defined by. And this guy was telling me about how he hustled every day and how many hours he spent expanding his MLM advertising business. And he was like, don't you want to get in on that? You can get in and start making money. And I have to flatly say, no, I don't want to do that. I like having everything I want materially, and then also traveling, learning new things, and having all free time all day. I like doing whatever I want all day. I'd much rather do that than work really hard for some money that I don't need. And he was like, but you can get more money. But I don't need it. And now I have all day to do whatever I want. And after I explain my view to whoever is explaining to me how important money is the first time, I inevitably get put to a scenario. Okay, well, what if you meet a millionaire or a billionaire, and then he takes you on a helicopter, you guys are flying around a helicopter, over the ocean, and he gives you sushi and there's champagne right there. My response is that helicopter rides are $80 in a bunch of countries. Sushi, really good sushi, $10. you can buy like 20 different kinds of champagne or zero sugar hard seltzers, which me prefer, for like 20 bucks. I've had hundreds of dollar caviar. It's good. I have had $7 caviar. It's also pretty good. Maybe not as good, but really not that far away. And I'm sure the $8,000 caviar, I'm sure that is very good caviar. But if I have to ask myself, how important is the $8,000 caviar that I would have to spend time making money to go get versus the $7 caviar that I love? I'm just, no. I don't have to spend any more time to get caviar. It's right there. They sell it in the supermarket. Actually, when I was leaving Panama City, the last week I was in Panama City, all of the caviar went on sale for 50% off. And it didn't expire for another 4 months or something, according to the label on the date. So I just bought 8 jars of caviar. And I had a couple already. I thought it was worth it for the $7 or $8, whatever it was. But now it's $3.50. And I was like, yeah. So I got a whole bunch of that. And when seafood is that fresh, like it is in Panama anyway, the caviar is going to be pretty good. This is the best sushi in all of Denver. Okay, cool. I bet it's pretty good if it's the best sushi in Denver, but that is 6,000 feet in elevation and far away from any ocean. So it's probably not going to be as fresh as the sushi right next to the ocean that some old dude in a shack cuts up and gives me. On the beach in Taiwan, that guy had good maguro, I will tell you right now. And if I'm in a group and I'm talking to people, I have to explain that over and over when we're traveling because everybody wants to know everybody else, which is cool, but I have different values than a lot of people about very common human experiences. And money, and the amount of money one should want, is one that I have had to explain over and over again. And so being by myself, compared to having certain conversations over and over again, is pretty nice. I like sitting here and, funnily enough, explaining that same value system again as if I'm having this conversation again. But this is more a document of how I feel, and I'm clarifying my feelings instead of, in a group of other people, having to defend against an attitude of financial literacy that I disagree with. Or if I'm with a bunch of guys, and all the guys want to be like, man, did you see her? Did you look at that butt? I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm not comfortable talking about people as objects. And yes, I think, boy, she's really hot. A lot, constantly. I think of that all the time because so many women are beautiful. But I don't like thinking about how she would feel if she heard me talking about her like an object with another human. Like, I think of smacking kids in the back of the head all the time when they won't shut up, but I've never done that. Even though they deserve it. No, I don't even think they deserve it. They're just intrusive thoughts. And when a kid is loud, it'd be like, sometimes you gotta just punch a kid in the face. But I've never punched a kid in the face because I don't think that's the right thing to do in any way. And I also don't think it's right to talk about someone like they're an object, but that comes up very often when I'm hanging out with groups of guys. Or when I get into a taxi cab. I can get into a taxi cab. This is a specific memory. There was a girl on a motor scooter in front of us, and the taxi cab, the driver, got my attention because I was listening to something, and he's, pointing at her in front of us, and he's like, it's good, right? It's pretty good. And then I'm just uncomfortable. To what end? I ask. Yeah, it's good. She has that body part that we all like. Why are we talking about it? There's gonna be so many butts on so many people on every block. We don't have to talk about that one like it's not the same as every other butt. It's such a weird, uncomfortable situation for me when men start talking about body parts of women. And I was like, no, yeah, I get it, but I mean, you have sisters. Isn't this weird for you to talk about a little bit at all? He was like, no, I'm not talking about them. And I was like, okay. You are, though, because you aren't talking about the woman you're talking about. You're talking about two big parts of her that you like. You're just talking about the parts. And those are the same parts that your mother and sisters have. Just weird. Weird for me to hear when people bring it up, guys bring it up, and uncomfortable for me to participate in. So every moment I'm not hanging out with a group of guys is every moment I know I don't have to. And I'm a guy, so I'm not even the object of this leering objectification. And it's uncomfortable for me, so I don't even know how women are able to control their disgust for that kind of behavior, as well as they do in polite society. Yeah, not having to engage in talking about money with people who inherently value money, like the physical currency, and then being in uncomfortable sexual conversations with other men, and honestly, almost as huge for me, wasting time deciding to do something, or casual prejudice, or explicit constant prejudice, generalized anxieties. Between those sources of discomfort, not having to be next to someone and dealing with those things is great. That's great for me. Every moment I'm watching a cool TV show about cooking stuff called Oishinbo, I'm actually thinking of a specific show right now, is another 20 minutes that I don't have to be in any of those three situations. And I do like hanging out with people. I like going camping. I like being around people I'm comfortable around. But no matter how comfortable I am around someone, something is gonna come up that I don't identify with value-wise, or I disagree with strongly value-wise. And it's gonna take up a bunch of time to explain why. And I have to do it over and over again, the more I am in physical proximity to a bunch of other people. The more I'm traveling in a group, the more I have to deal with those irritating conversations and time-wasting picadillos? Is that a word? Picadillos is only for like a sexual liaison, right? Nope, peccadillos for a small mistake, something that someone does wrong that's not very serious. That is not the context in which peccadillo is usually used. It's usually used to describe like sexual liaisons that ruin the lives of celebrities. That's weird that it's such a gentle definition in real life. Anyway, that's why I don't get lonely when I'm not physically near other people, because I rarely vibe with someone to the point that I'm comfortable talking with them for long periods of time and not worrying about what they might say next. That said, I am in a lot of conversations with people, and I meet people very often, and I do get into deep conversations all the time. Like I said, that solo traveler thing. So I do like having deep conversations, and I can very quickly enter into conversations where people do get my vibe, and that has sometimes led to wonderful relationships, platonic or romantic. And if I could travel with some of those people forever, I would love to. But I think even fewer people like the idea of traveling indefinitely, so that hasn't worked out yet. Oh, and I guess the third is just not having any deep relationships with other people, which I feel like I do have a deep relationship with members of my family and a few friends, and I'm very comfortable having a finite number of those relationships. I don't need an indefinite, increasing number of very deep relationships. A handful is good because it feels like a weighty responsibility again to be in a deep relationship, because I have to care for that person because I care about that person. Don't you get lonely? Not really. Sometimes I would like to talk to somebody, and in those moments, I will talk to someone. There are things that humans do. They give off, like, our gestures let each other know if we want to keep talking or if we want to stop talking. The way we phrase our sentences let us know, like, if you want to talk to someone, if you're interested in knowing more about that person. And I can't read those like a book, but I can tell if someone doesn't want to talk or if someone is open to talking more. And if I am also open to talking more that day, then I do. And that's obviously not super easy to do in a place where I can't speak the language very well, but I've never been in a country where I haven't been able to get into a talk with someone. I mean, largely because English is such a prevalent language around the world. So even if I can't speak the local language, I almost inevitably bump into someone that I can speak with. Oh, and if I can't, just go to a hostel. If you go to a hostel, you will have conversations with people, unless you are trying super hard not to. But I stayed in hostels recently because I was looking to have that connection again. I hadn't been talking to a lot of people. I'd just been solo mountain climbing and living by myself for a while. And I was like, man, it's been a while since I've had a bunch of connections. I've lived in a community type place. And so I lived in a shared apartment building, and I talked to a bunch of people, and they told me about their lives. The fishing guy told me about the crocodiles he saw and the manta ray he caught. I learned about the music tastes of the girls, and the flat earth and lizard people from one of them. Whoops. And I just talked to everybody and learned about their lives, and it was nice being that community. And then after a few months, it had been nice being in that community, and I was ready to start traveling solo again. I learned about people, and they were interesting, and I made friends. And that's what I wanted to do. And now I wanted to travel to a new place again. It sort of makes sense that I am so contented with solo traveling, because I'm never lonely. As far as I understand what people mean when they ask me, no, I'm constantly surrounded by a culture of humanity. Any human I meet, I know that I am extremely similar to them, that we basically have the same values and concerns. And then specifically in physical proximity to humans, I am around them a lot. And I don't have trouble with striking up a conversation. And sometimes I even enjoy getting into those financial inherent value conversations I was talking about. I can have fun explaining that sometimes, especially if someone's interested in understanding why they should not worry about money beyond a certain point, beyond their concrete financial goals, in fact. Then I just get to do a podcast episode in somebody's face, which obviously I love doing. Do you get lonely? No. There are so many people that want to talk, not just with me, but with everyone. People want to talk because they want to connect with other people. They want to make sure that that other human is the same as them, and they mostly are. So it's really satisfying to talk to someone and make a new connection and confirm, like, all right, even if this crazy weirdo travels all the world and he doesn't think money has inherent value, he does also like ice cream. And I like ice cream. And it's hot today. I met this Danish couple, Mikkel and Freya, and we hung out for a couple weeks in Italy. I met them at one campsite. I think I was hammock camping by that point. No, I was still tent camping at that point. I was just sleeping in the hammock every day. And they were going to a different town, told me to meet them if I was heading that way. I ended up heading that way. I did meet them a few days later, so we kept hanging out. And there's this one time I got a 6-pack, and we were sitting on a cliff in front of the ocean, which was pretty awesome and terrifying to swim in because it was just blue, blue, blue with no bottom. And I had the idea to drop the 6-pack of beers, which was not refrigerated, into the ocean because it was, 10 degrees cooler in there or whatever. and let it cool down the beer. And that's a weird thing to do, but I was comfortable with this Danish couple, and they were friendly, and we had fun talks, and we had fun exploring new places together. It was just a fun time and comfortable. So I felt comfortable trying this thing out that would look crazy to a lot of people, I think. But it seemed really fun and I wanted to try it. So I did it, and when I left I had a piece of paracord in my backpack, and I tied it to what couldn't have been cardboard, right? Because I'm putting it into the ocean, but I can't think of, I think I put the beers in my backpack. Yeah, I think that's what happened. I put the beers in my backpack, tied the paracord to that, and then lowered it down like 30 feet into the ocean until it was resting on the seafloor. Because it was deep, or it was resting on like a rock down there. Then we waited for 20 minutes and talked, pulled the beer back up, we cracked them open and drank it. And it was like 5 degrees cooler. If it was in there for a couple hours, it would have been noticeably, comfortably cool. But I did like that it was a little bit cooler. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. It kind of worked. It is a little cooler. What do you think? And Freya looked at me and she said, with this big smile, "It's salty." I was like, yeah, it is salty. Those two were super funny, Mikkel and Freya. They were always, and that's like fluent English. She knew she was making a joke. They were making jokes all the time. That was a really fun couple of weeks. And when Freya asked me if I was lonely, I was confused because I was hanging out with them and enjoying an afternoon sunset talking about our lives. I was enjoying time with friends. But that's probably why I'm so content with solo traveling most of the time. Because I can't seem to not be in the midst of almost too many people to contend with. Once I start traveling with like Mikkel and Freya, for example, I don't want another traveling group. I want to solidify this relationship I am making first and be comfortable in this group. Make sure that I do fit in this group and they fit with me. The more people we add to the group, the more risk there is of time getting wasted on decisions or 2 members of the group disagreeing with each other. There's just more trouble to deal with, without many tangible benefits of having a group. Like, I guess if there's a car stuck on the middle of the road, we could all help push the car out easier than if I was by myself. But that off chance isn't worth it to me to hang out with too many people at one time, because there are so many people to talk to all the time and interact with and make friends with all the time anyway while I'm traveling. And if you start traveling, you're going to see the same thing. If you start, especially as a solo traveler, especially if you go to a hostel, I mean, you're just going to connect with people. It just happens someone's going to pull out a guitar, someone's going to invite you to a group meal, someone's going to, the hostel owner might organize an event where everyone brings a dish to the table and you all share food. There's just so many ways to connect to people as a solo traveler that you're going to find it difficult to get lonely. Every single person I meet has 100 stories from that week, or they want to tell their greatest hits from their lives all over again. Well, this is how I started 26 years ago. I was in Malaysia, and there was the shortest woman you ever saw there. And then I'm in for 4 hours of stories. And it's somewhat overwhelming because that's just a single person that I have met who I'm interested in hearing more from. And I invest myself in listening to them, and I'm empathizing with whatever situation they're telling me, whoever is talking to me. I'm settling on their level or peaking up at their level, trying to figure out what they're trying to communicate. I invest myself in that conversation if I'm interested in this person. Because half the time someone is telling a story, they are telling a story, and the other half of the time, they are abstractly expressing a deeply held value, and I'm always fascinated to know more about the values that people hold, and the perspective and beliefs that shape the world they see, and the world they live in, relative to my own. And that can happen in the middle of the desert, or in the middle of the city. Someone is always around. obviously more people in the city than in the middle of the desert, but someone is around. So sometimes I feel like the only counterbalance to so much empathizing and so much concern and interest in the stories of just the single other person is solo traveling and spending all day watching a new TV show or walking along a mountain range a couple weeks or making these podcasts. There are expat meetups in every single country in the world. There are just groups of travelers who meet up every week, 3 times a week, just to say hello to other travelers. Don't you get lonely? I've heard the question, or received the question many times. Not really. Not as far as I understand what people are asking. I can't play any instrument well enough to get into a jam session with other people. And by that I mean I can play the tin whistle, sort of. So I'm really at a dearth here. I'm really empty of musical talent. Despite that, I miss or I get lonely for not jamming with people, not sitting around and making music with a group. So recently I've been thinking I need to learn to play an instrument well enough that I can play music in a group. Because that's such a common thing for people to do that I've never taken part in, but I'm good at getting into the groove of things, and I feel like I would enjoy jamming. So, I don't know, is that loneliness? I feel like that's just wanting to try something new, right? Yeah, that's not loneliness. That's the closest I get to loneliness, as far as I understand what people are asking me. I kind of want to start jamming with people, but I have to learn a normal jammy instrument first. Thank you so much for listening. This was fun. You can talk to me at bitofarambler@gmail.com or Blue Sky, bit of a rambler on Lemmy. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.